Masters of the Universe isn't making a comeback because it never truly left. With the live action Masters of the Universe film arriving June 5th, 2026, now's the perfect time to look at why this toy line still matters over 40 years later. My collection, vintage 80s figures, the original Castle Grayskull, vehicles like the Battle Ram and Wind Raider, and a solid mix of heroes and villains, tells the real story of why these toys survived when so many others didn't. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly why Masters of the Universe remains one of the most powerful toy lines from the 80s and why it still commands a shelf today.
Dynamite! Back to the 80s we go!
Every toy line in 1982 wanted your attention, but Masters of the Universe demanded it. The figures were bigger, 5.5 inches, when most competitors were 3.75 inches. The colors were louder, vibrant greens, purples, oranges, and reds that jumped off the shelf. The designs were bold in a way that felt almost unreal. While Star Wars and G.I. Joe aimed for realism and military accuracy, Masters of the Universe went the opposite direction. These characters looked like they stepped out of a Frank Frazetta fantasy painting mixed with Flash Gordon science fiction. Swords and sorcery, laser weapons and castles, barbarian warriors and robotic villains. Muscles, armor, and monsters all existing in the same world. And somehow, it worked. Masters of the Universe didn't rely on just one hero or one villain to carry the entire line. Yes, He-Man was the center, the most powerful man in the universe, with his iconic power harness, battle axe, and that legendary transformation from Prince Adam.
By the power of Grayskull!
Yes, Skeletor became one of the most iconic villains in toy history. That skull face, the Havoc staff, the purple hood, and blue skin, he's instantly recognizable even today. But the real strength of this line came from everyone else around them. Look at this shelf. Man-at-Arms with his club and interchangeable weapons, Teela with her staff and snake armor, Beastman covered in orange fur with that snarling face, Merman with his green scales and trident, Trapjaw with his mechanical jaw and arm attachments that you could swap out. Each character is completely different from the next. Different colors, different armor styles, different faces, different weapons. Even the construction of the figures varied. Some had furry additions, some had rubber parts, some had action features built into their design. There are no filler characters in Masters of the Universe. Every figure on this shelf has visual personality, whether their backstory came from the Filmation cartoon, the mini comics packed with the toys, or just your own imagination during hours of play. Each one mattered. You didn't need the full roster to have an epic battle. 3 heroes and 3 villains were enough to create an entire world of conflict and adventure. That's why collectors still hunt these figures decades later. Each one stands on its own merit. Each one brings something unique to the display. One of the biggest myths in collecting is that a collection needs to be complete to matter. That you need every figure, every variant, every obscure European release to have something worth showing. This collection proves that idea wrong. I don't have every Masters of the Universe figure ever made, and I don't need to. Mattel released over 70 unique characters in the vintage line between 1982 and 1987. That's not counting variants, mail-aways, international exclusives, or the later New Adventures line. What matters isn't completeness, it's presence. The core heroes and villains standing together, the vintage Castle Grayskull dominating the center of the shelf, a few key vehicles, some weapons and accessories scattered around. That's enough to communicate what this line was about and why it still stands out 4 decades later. Almost everything here is from the original 80s run, the figures that kids actually played with, that survived moves and garage sales and decades of storage. The few modern additions, like the sorceress on top of the Castle Grayskull or these carded figures on the wall, show the line's evolution without replacing what came before. Masters of the Universe has always been about visual impact, not checklist completion, and this shelf has impact. When someone walks into this room, their eyes go straight to Castle Grayskull and these figures. Not because the collection is complete, but because the designs are that strong. There's a reason these vintage 80s figures still hold up today, and it goes beyond nostalgia. They're simple, solid, and built to last. Thick limbs that could withstand years of play, spring action waists that let you twist and punch, rubber band articulation at the hips that, if it hasn't dry rotted, still works after 40 years. Weapons that actually fit in their hands and could be displayed or used in battle. These were designed for play first, display second. Kids could put these figures through intense battles, backyard adventures, crashes, and countless imaginative scenarios, and most of them survived. But beyond the durability, there's the aesthetic. These figures still pop visually. The bright colors haven't faded on most of them. That's quality plastic and paint from an era when toys were built differently. The sculpts are bold and exaggerated in the best way possible. Oversized muscles, dramatic poses, expressive faces, even the evil characters have personality sculpted right into them. Standing next to modern collectibles with 30 points of articulation and photoreal paint, these vintage Motu figures still command attention. They still look powerful. They still feel like characters instead of just action figures. That's rare for toys from 1982. Most action figures from that era look primitive and dated now. Masters of the Universe still looks iconic. The vintage Castle Grayskull isn't just a playset. It's the heart and soul of the entire Masters of the Universe line. This thing was iconic in 1982, and it's still iconic today. That skull facade dominates any shelf it's on. The working jaw bridge that lowers down, the trap door that drops enemies into the depths below, the weapons rack for storing swords and axes, the throne room, the elevator platform, every detail was designed to spark an imagination and facilitate play. You didn't need instructions to know what to do with Castle Grayskull. Heroes defend it, villains attack it, the fate of Eternia hangs in the balance. Stories happen around this castle. And the construction, this thing is sturdy. It's mostly hollow inside to keep costs down, sure.
Just as I suspected. Hollow, you metal-munching moron.
But the plastic is thick and the design is smart. 40 plus years later, it still stands. The drawbridge still works. The flags might be missing, so have some of mine. Some stickers might be peeling, but the castle itself endures. This is what made Masters of the Universe special. Mattel could have just sold figures. Instead, they created an entire world. Castle Grayskull gave that world a location. A fortress worth fighting for, a symbol of power that both sides wanted to control. And when you displayed your figures around it, heroes on one side, villains on the other, you weren't just showing off toys, you were showing off a story frozen in time. The vehicles in Masters of the Universe weren't just transportation. They were extensions of the fantasy. Look at the battle ram. It's a battering ram on wheels with massive horns. Does it make logical sense? No. Does it look awesome charging into battle? Absolutely. He-Man or Man-at-Arms could ride it straight into Skeletor's forces, and it fit perfectly into the world. The Wind Raider, one of the most iconic vehicles in the line, a flying machine that looks like a blend of ancient bird wings and futuristic technology. Bright green and orange colors, room for a figure to pilot, Spinning propellers. This thing looked like nothing else on toy shelves in 1983, and it still doesn't. And then there's Stridor, the robotic horse. This wasn't just a mount, it was a character in its own right. Mechanical legs with articulated joints, futuristic armor plating, a design that said technology and nature combined. Stridor represented the flexibility of the Motu universe, where a barbarian warrior could ride a robot horse and it made perfect sense. These vehicles and creatures all fit into the same aesthetic: colorful, functional, and imaginative. They weren't realistic military vehicles or simple repaints. Each one had personality. Each one expanded the possibilities of play. That's why they still display so well today. They weren't designed to fade into the background. They were designed to be centerpieces alongside the figures. One thing that set Masters of the Universe apart from other lines was the built-in action features. Every figure had that spring action waist. You twisted them to the right, let go, and they'd snap back with a punching motion. Simple, but effective. It meant every figure could throw a punch in battle. Kids didn't need to imagine the action, the toys actually moved. But Mattel went further with specific characters. Trapjaw's arm attachments could be swapped out: hook, laser, claw. His jaw actually opened and closed. That interactivity made him more than just a static villain. Mechanex's neck extended upward so he could scout from a distance. Cyclone had a spinning torso that created a cyclone effect. Man-E-Faces had 3 faces that rotated: human, monster, and robot, giving you 3 characters in one. These weren't gimmicks, they were features that enhanced play. They gave each character a unique ability that made them valuable in your collection, even if they weren't the main hero or villain. And here's the thing, most of these features still work today. That spring action still snaps back. Trapjaw's arm still swaps. The engineering was simple, but it was built to last. I don't keep these Masters of the Universe figures just because they look good on a shelf. I keep them because of what they represent. These toys are from an era when imagination wasn't handed to you fully formed. You didn't watch a show and then recreate specific scenes. You created your own scenes, your own battles, your own stories. He-Man didn't need a movie to be a hero in your mind. Skeletor didn't need a detailed backstory to be menacing. The Filmation cartoon gave you a framework, sure, but the real stories happened on your bedroom floor with whatever figures you had. And that kind of play, that creative freedom, shaped how a lot of us think about storytelling, world building, and collecting today. When I look at this shelf, I don't just see vintage toys from the 80s, I see hours of childhood imagination. I see the first time I got He-Man for my birthday or Christmas morning when Castle Grayskull was under the tree. I see every battle I staged, every adventure I created, every time these characters felt real because I made them real. That emotional connection doesn't fade. If anything, it gets stronger as you get older and realize how rare that kind of pure, creative play actually was. These figures carry memories, and those memories are worth preserving. You can't talk about Masters of the Universe without acknowledging the Filmation cartoon that ran from 1983 to 1985.
And the Masters of the Universe. I am Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull!" Cringer became the mighty Battle Cat, and I became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others share this secret. our friends the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together we defend Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor.
That show did something crucial. It gave the toys a voice, a world, a set of characters that kids could connect with beyond just the action features. He-Man's transformation from Prince Adam became iconic because of that cartoon. By the power of Grayskull, I have the power. That moment was seared into the minds of everyone who watched it. The show gave personality to characters that might have just been cool-looking toys otherwise. But here's what made it work. The cartoon didn't restrict play, it enhanced it. The mini comics that came with the toys told a darker, more violent version of the story. The cartoon told a lighter, more moral lesson-focused version, and kids playing with the toys created their own version that borrowed from both or ignored both completely.
In today's story, Elena tried taking a magic potion which she thought would help her. Well, she found out there aren't any magic potions. And you know what? There aren't any magic drugs either. Anytime you take one from anybody but your parents or your doctor, you're taking a very big chance. You're gambling with your health, maybe even your life. Drugs don't make your problems go away. They just create more.
That flexibility is part of why Masters of the Universe endured. The toys weren't locked into one interpretation. They were open to whatever story you wanted to tell. The fact that a new live-action Masters of the Universe film is coming out June 5th, 2026 isn't just Hollywood cashing in on nostalgia. It's validation. Validation that this franchise still has cultural power after more than 40 years. Validation that people across multiple generations still care about He-Man, Skeletor, and the world of Eternia. Validation that the brand maintained its identity through decades of change, multiple reboots, and shifting toy markets. New content exists because what Mattel built in 1982 was solid. The foundation was strong enough to support everything that came after. The 2002 reboot, the classics line, the Netflix shows, and now a major motion picture. And collections like this, shelves full of vintage 80s figures that still look incredible today, prove that foundation was built to last. These toys didn't need constant reinvention to stay relevant. They just needed to be themselves. A lot of toy lines from the 80s burned bright and disappeared. Thundercats had incredible designs and a great cartoon, but the toys didn't last. Silverhawks tried to be Thundercats in space, gone within 2 years. M.A.S.K had transforming vehicles and M.A.S.K with powers, faded by the late 80s. Centurions had modular weapon systems, forgotten by most people today. Masters of the Universe survived all of them. It survived because it was flexible without losing its core identity. The line could add space themes, snake themes, rock themes, meteor themes, and it all still felt like Motu because the visual language was so strong. It survived because it invited imagination instead of controlling it. There was no right way to play with these toys. No required storyline, no canonical timeline you had to follow. It survived because it respected its audience. Whether you were a 5-year-old kid in 1983 smashing figures together on the floor, or an adult collector in 2026 carefully posing them on a shelf. That balance between fun and respect, between play and display, between nostalgia and evolution, that's rare in any product line, let alone one built around plastic action figures. In 2026, you can buy brand new Masters of the Universe figures. The Origins line brings back the vintage aesthetic with modern production. Masterverse offers highly detailed collector's figures. Super 7 makes premium versions with ultimate articulation. So why does a vintage collection still matter? Because these are the originals. These are the toys that started it all. These figures have history, not just the history of the brand, but personal history. These might be the actual toys someone played with as a kid, or they might be the figures they always wanted but never got. There's a weight to vintage toys that reproductions can't replicate. The plastic feels different, the paint has a certain quality, the wear and tear tells a story, a missing weapon here, a loose joint there, paint rubbing on the knees from years of posing. These aren't perfect mint in box collectibles, they're survivors. They made it through decades of play, storage, garage sales, and changing hands, and they're still here, still displayable, still powerful. That's what makes a vintage Motu collection special. It's not just about the toys themselves, it's about what they've endured and what they represent. This collection isn't about owning everything, it's not about having every variant or every rare piece, it's not about perfection or completion. It's about honoring a toy line that understood something fundamental about play, imagination, and design. The best toys don't tell you what to do, they invite you to create. Masters of the Universe gave kids in the 80s a world where anything was possible, where heroes and villains were larger than life, where castles and creatures and vehicles all existed in the same universe without explanation or apology. And that world still exists, right here on this shelf. These figures still command attention. Castle Grayskull still dominates the space. The colors still pop, the characters still feel powerful. Masters of the Universe survives because it was built to endure, on shelves like this one, in memories that span generations, and in the stories we continue to tell about these characters today. The brand never went away. It just kept proving year after year why it mattered in the first place. And as long as there are collectors who appreciate bold design, creative freedom, and toys that were built to last, Masters of the Universe will continue to have the power.
I can't remember when I've had a more pleasant day.